Day 1 to 6 o'clock hours. The coffee maker in the FEMA Emergency Operations Center had been broken for 3 weeks, which meant I was running on convenience store caffeine and the particular brand of nervous energy that comes from knowing something big is about to happen. Presidential nuclear warnings weren't routine. In 15 years of emergency coordination, I'd only seen 2, and both had been false alarms that still kept me awake for days afterward. I'm Dathan Pike, and at 6 o'clock on what would become the last normal morning in American government, I was doing what I always did, reviewing overnight intelligence briefs and trying to predict which crisis would hit us first. The EOC hummed with its usual pre-dawn efficiency. Banks of monitors displayed weather patterns, seismic activity, and communication networks across all 50 states. My team wouldn't arrive for another hour, but the night shift briefing had mentioned elevated chatter about today's scheduled presidential address. At 8 o'clock, the president would warn the nation about what the intelligence community was calling a credible nuclear threat to national security. The details were classified above my clearance level, but FEMA's job was simple: be ready for whatever came next. Pike, you seeing this frequency interference? I turned to find Marcus Chun, our night communications officer, frowning at his console. Static lines crawled across his spectrum analyzer like digital worms. Local or widespread? I asked, walking over to check his readings. That's the weird part. It's targeted, only affecting the bands we use for presidential emergency broadcasts. Started about 20 minutes ago. I studied the display. In 15 years, I'd never seen interference patterns like this. Too regular to be atmospheric, too specific to be accidental. Equipment malfunction? That's what I thought, but backup systems show the same signature. Marcus adjusted his headset and tried another frequency. Whatever's causing it, it's not coming from our end. The main doors opened with their characteristic pneumatic hiss, and Mailer Quinn walked in carrying his usual black coffee and manila folders. Quinn was NSA liaison, officially assigned to monitor communications intelligence relevant to domestic emergency preparedness. Unofficially, he was the quietest person I'd ever worked with, spoke only when he had something important to say, which made him either very efficient or very careful. Morning, Mailer, I called. Marcus is picking up some interference on the emergency bands. Quinn paused at his workstation, setting down his coffee with the precision of a man who did everything exactly the same way every day. I know. Been tracking it since 5:30. Source? Unknown. But it's not random. He opened one of his folders and pulled out a printout covered in frequency analysis graphs. The interference follows a pattern, starts low, builds to peak intensity, then cuts off completely. Cycle repeats every 7 minutes and 33 seconds. Marcus leaned back in his chair. That's not atmospheric. No, Quinn agreed. It's not. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. The early warning system that had kept me alive through Hurricane Katrina, the 2011 tornado outbreak, and the California wildfire siege of 2018. When experienced emergency personnel start using words like not random and unknown source, it's time to pay attention. Any chance this affects the presidential broadcast? I asked. Quinn consulted his folder again. Depends on timing. If the interference continues its current pattern, we'll hit peak disruption at 8:07, 7 minutes into the address. That's oddly specific. Yes, it is. The way Quinn said it made me study his face more carefully. In 3 years of working together, I'd learned to read his tells. Right now, his jaw was set in the particular way that meant he knew something he wasn't authorized to share. Mailer, is there something? Pike! Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp with concern. I'm getting reports from multiple agencies. White House Communications is reporting unusual delays in pre-broadcast coordination. Pentagon's having issues with their secure channels. Even Secret Service is mentioning technical difficulties with their protective detail communications. I checked the wall clock, 6:47. The president would begin his address in 73 minutes, and the entire federal emergency communication system was developing mysterious problems simultaneously. Get Jackson Moore on the line, I ordered. If the White House Chief of Staff doesn't know about this interference, he needs to. Marcus nodded and began dialing. While he worked, I walked over to Quinn's station. Pattern analysis is your specialty. What's your gut telling you about this? Quinn looked up from his folders, and for just a moment, I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before: uncertainty. My gut says the pattern is too precise to be natural, too sophisticated to be foreign interference, and too perfectly timed to be coincidental. Meaning someone or something wants to disrupt the presidential address at exactly 8:07. The pneumatic doors opened again, and the day shift began filtering in. Sarah Martinez from logistics, carrying her thermos of tea and already reviewing supply manifests on her tablet. Tom Bradley from communications, looking like he hadn't slept, which probably meant he'd been up all night monitoring intelligence chatter. Rebecca Santos from medical coordination, whose presence today meant someone expected casualties. Within 15 minutes, the EOC transformed from night shift quiet to day shift controlled chaos. Phones rang, keyboards clattered, and 3 different news feeds played simultaneously on the main display wall. But underneath the normal noise, I could feel something else: tension. "Pike, I can't reach more," Marcus reported. "White House switchboard says he's in meetings, but they can't patch me through to his office, his cell, or his secure line." Since when does the chief of staff become unreachable an hour before a presidential nuclear warning? That's what I'm wondering. At 7:30, the interference patterns intensified. Quinn's spectrum analyzer looked like a Christmas tree, with signal disruption across multiple bands. The regular cycle had broken down into something more chaotic, peaks and valleys of static that seemed to follow no pattern at all. "It's adapting," Quinn said quietly. "What do you mean adapting?" "The interference. Every time Marcus tries a different frequency to avoid it, the disruption shifts to match. It's not just blocking communications, it's learning our countermeasures." I stared at the display, watching the digital representation of something that shouldn't exist. In all my years of emergency management, I'd dealt with natural disasters, equipment failures, and human error. I'd never dealt with anything that could think. At 7:55, every screen in the EOC automatically switched to the presidential emergency broadcast feed. The familiar blue background appeared, with the presidential seal centered and the words "Emergency Address" in bold letters beneath it. This is normal protocol, I told myself, but my hands were already reaching for the emergency contact list. Something was wrong, not just with the interference, but with the entire situation. Nuclear threats didn't come with mysterious communication disruptions. Presidential addresses didn't coincide with impossible frequency patterns. At 7:59, the interference suddenly stopped. Every spectrum analyzer in the room showed clear channels. Perfect silence across all bands. "That's not good," Marcus muttered. At 8 o'clock exactly, the president appeared on screen. He looked older than in his recent public appearances, and his usually confident demeanor seemed strained. "My fellow Americans," he began, "I speak to you today about a threat to our national security unlike any we have faced before. Our intelligence agencies have confirmed the existence of." At 8:07, exactly as Quinn had predicted, the screen filled with static. But this wasn't ordinary static. The interference patterns created shapes, geometric forms that seemed to twist and move within the digital snow. And underneath the visual chaos, I could swear I heard something that sounded almost like voices. "Marcus, are you getting this?" "Getting what?" "It's just static." I looked around the room. Everyone else saw television snow. I saw impossible geometries and heard whispers in languages that didn't exist. The static cut off abruptly, returning to the presidential seal and technical difficulties. "Please stand by" message. "EOC, this is White House communications." A voice crackled through our speakers. "We have lost contact with Overwatch. Repeat, no contact with presidential detail. Request immediate status check on all federal emergency systems." Marcus grabbed his headset. "White House comm, this is FEMA EOC. All our systems show green. What's your status on the president?" "Stand by FEMA." But the channel went dead. I looked at Quinn, who was staring at his equipment with an expression I'd never seen before. "Mailer, the interference," he said slowly. "It didn't disrupt the broadcast." "What do you mean?" "I mean the static we just saw. It's not coming from outside. According to my analysis, that signal originated from inside the White House bunker system. That's impossible. Yes, Quinn said, meeting my eyes. It is impossible. Just like everything else that's happened this morning. The pneumatic doors opened with unusual force, and a woman I didn't recognize strode into the EOC. She was tall, professionally dressed, and carried herself with the particular authority that comes from high-level security clearance. Her ID badge was blank except for a barcode. "Which one of you is Pike?" she asked. "That's me. Alandra Crow, Department of Defense Nuclear Safety Division. I need to speak with you immediately about Shadow Protocol." "I'm not familiar with that designation." "You will be," she said, glancing around the room at my staff. "The question is whether you'll live long enough to understand what it means." Day 1, 8 to 12 o'clock hours. Alandra Crow didn't wait for my response. She walked directly to the secure briefing room adjacent to the main EOC floor, expecting me to follow. Her confidence suggested she'd been in facilities like this before, knew exactly where the classified discussion areas were located without asking. "Marcus, maintain contact attempts with White House communications," I called over my shoulder. "Quinn, keep monitoring those frequency patterns. If anything changes, I want to know immediately." The briefing room sealed with a soft hydraulic click, and Crow activated the electronic privacy screen, standard protocol for discussions involving classified information. But her next words weren't standard at all. "Mr. Pike, in the next 4 hours, you're going to receive reports of communication failures from every major federal facility on the East Coast. The pattern will suggest coordinated attack, equipment malfunction, or atmospheric interference. None of those explanations will be accurate." I settled into my chair, studying her face. Crow had the particular stillness of someone accustomed to delivering impossible news to people who weren't cleared to hear it. "What's your security clearance level?" "Level 7. I blinked. "There is no level 7. "Exactly." She opened a briefcase I hadn't noticed her carrying and removed a tablet with a screen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Shadow Protocol exists outside normal classification systems because it addresses threats that exist outside normal reality parameters." "Dr. Crow, the president isn't missing, Mr. Pike. He's been extracted." Through the briefing room's soundproof glass, I could see my team working with increased urgency. Marcus was on 3 different phone lines simultaneously. Quinn had pulled up displays I didn't recognize, frequency analysis patterns that looked more like abstract art than technical readouts. Extracted by whom? By the same system that's about to extract approximately 40% of federal government personnel over the next 72 hours. She touched her tablet screen, and the room's display monitor activated, showing a map of the United States covered in pulsing red dots. Each dot represents a facility currently experiencing communication difficulties. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every major government installation from Atlanta to Boston showed the same red indicator. Pentagon, NORAD, CDC headquarters, multiple FBI field offices, naval bases, Army installations, all reporting the same mysterious technical problems within hours of each other. "This is cyber warfare," I said. "Foreign actors targeting our infrastructure." "That's what it's designed to look like." Crow manipulated her tablet, and the display zoomed in on the Washington, D.C. area. "But cyber attacks don't explain this." The screen showed surveillance footage from the White House South Lawn, timestamp 7:47 this morning. I watched the president's motorcade arrive for his emergency address. The cars were real, the Secret Service detail looked normal, everything appeared routine. Then she switched to footage from the same camera, timestamped 8:15. The South Lawn was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of everything. No cars, no security barriers, no equipment. The lawn looked like it had been professionally landscaped and never used. "Equipment malfunction," I said automatically. Multiple camera angles, same phenomenon. Infrared, motion detection, even seismic sensors, all show the same thing. At exactly 8:07, everyone and everything associated with the presidential detail simply ceased to register on any monitoring system. I stared at the footage, my crisis management training warring with evidence that made no sense. People don't just vanish. No, they don't. They get extracted. The briefing room door opened, and Quinn entered without knocking, a breach of protocol that immediately put me on alert. Quinn never violated procedures. "Pike, we have a problem. Multiple agencies are reporting personnel evacuations, but the evacuations aren't showing up on any official channels." Crow looked at Quinn with interest. "You're the NSA liaison. What's your clearance level?" "TSSCI with additional compartments." Quinn's response was automatic, but his attention was focused on Crow's tablet. "That's not standard government equipment." "No, it's not." She held up the device. "This tablet exists specifically to monitor shadow protocol activations. Right now, it's showing me that every person with security clearance for projects related to anomalous phenomena research has been flagged for extraction." "Anomalous phenomena research?" I asked. "UFO investigations, psychic research programs, time distortion studies, reality breach containment, any project dealing with phenomena that contradict consensus understanding of physics and reality." Quinn sat down heavily. "How many people are we talking about?" "Approximately 8,000 federal employees, plus an unknown number of contractors and consultants." Crow's tablet displayed a constantly updating number counter. "The extraction began at 8:07 and will be completed within 72 hours. "Extracted to where?" "That's not the right question, Mr. Pike. The right question is, extracted to when?" Before I could process that statement, Marcus's voice crackled through the intercom. "Pike, you need to get out here. We're getting reports from field offices nationwide, and none of it makes sense." We returned to the main EOC floor, where the controlled chaos had escalated to barely controlled panic. Every phone line was active, the main display showed news feeds from major networks, and my staff were handling simultaneous crises across multiple time zones. "Report," I ordered. Sarah Martinez looked up from her logistics console. "FEMA Region 4 in Atlanta reports their entire administrative staff failed to report for duty this morning. Building security shows them badging in normally, but internal cameras can't locate any personnel inside the facility." "Region 8 in Denver is similar," Tom Bradley added from communications. "Phone logs show normal call volumes, but when other agencies try to reach specific personnel, they're told those employees don't exist." Rebecca Santos from Medical Coordination was reviewing reports on her tablet. "CDC is reporting something even stranger. Their infectious disease response team was scheduled for a briefing at 9 o'clock. The meeting room cameras show 15 people sitting around a conference table having a discussion. But when other staff tried to enter the room, they found it completely empty." I looked at Quinn, who was studying his frequency analysis equipment with growing concern. "Mailer, what are you seeing?" "The interference patterns have changed again. Instead of blocking communications, they're now editing them." "Editing how?" Quinn pointed to his display, which showed two identical frequency signatures running in parallel. "This is a recording of a phone call between the Pentagon and Fort Bragg from 9:30 this morning. Both ends of the conversation show normal voice patterns, two people having a routine discussion about personnel transfers." He switched to a different display. "This is the same phone call recorded simultaneously from Fort Bragg's end." The second recording was completely different. Instead of two voices, it showed only one, the Fort Bragg caller apparently talking to himself, with long pauses where responses should have been. "That's impossible," I said. "Yes, just like everything else today." Quinn adjusted his headset and tried another frequency. "I've been monitoring communications across all federal agencies for the past hour. Approximately 30% of all phone calls show the same discrepancy. Conversations that exist on one end but not the other." Crow nodded grimly. "Shadow protocol isn't just extracting personnel. It's editing reality to maintain the appearance of normal operations." "How is that possible?" "I don't have clearance for that information." The main doors opened, and Jackson Moore strode in with the particular urgency of a man accustomed to having every problem solved immediately. White House Chief of Staff for 18 months, Moore had the politician's gift for projecting confidence, even when he clearly had no idea what was happening. "Pike, what the hell is going on?" "I've been trying to coordinate government continuity protocols, but half my contact list leads to dead ends." People who were in meetings with me yesterday apparently don't exist today. Mr. Moore, this is Dr. Alandra Crow from DoD Nuclear Safety. She has information about something called Shadow Protocol. Moore looked at Crow with the skepticism of someone who'd spent years dealing with agency representatives trying to expand their authority during crises. Never heard of it. That's intentional, Crow replied. Shadow Protocol was classified at a level above White House access. Only personnel directly involved in anomalous research programs were briefed on its existence. Anomalous research? What kind of? Moore stopped mid-sentence, his face going pale. The president mentioned something this morning. Before the broadcast, he said the nuclear threat wasn't coming from foreign powers. What exactly did he say? I asked. He said the threat was coming from impossible sources, and that our response would need to be impossible as well. Moore sat down at one of the conference tables, looking older than his 53 years. I thought he was speaking metaphorically. Crow's tablet chimed softly, and she glanced at the screen. Mr. Moore, according to Shadow Protocol monitoring, you're flagged for extraction in approximately 6 hours. Extraction? What are you talking about? Everyone with knowledge of classified projects related to reality anomalies is being systematically removed from normal spacetime. The process is designed to prevent contamination of consensus reality with information that could destabilize the fundamental nature of existence. Moore stood up abruptly. That's insane. Yes, Crow agreed. But insanity is often the appropriate response to impossible circumstances. My tablet buzzed with an incoming priority message. The sender was listed as POTUS Secure Channel, but the timestamp showed it had been sent at 14:30, 2.5 hours in the future. The message contained only coordinates and 5 words. Shadow Protocol Final Phase activated. I showed the message to the group. Quinn studied it with his pattern analysis skills. Moore examined it with political skepticism, and Crow read it with the resignation of someone who'd been expecting bad news. Those coordinates, Crow said finally, lead to a facility that officially doesn't exist. What kind of facility? The kind where Shadow Protocol was developed, and if the president is sending messages from the future. She paused, checking her tablet again. Then we're already too late to stop what's coming. The lights in the EOC flickered once, twice, then stabilized. But in that brief moment of darkness, I could have sworn I saw something impossible. The room was empty except for me, as if everyone else had simply ceased to exist. When the lights returned to normal, my team was still there, still working. But Quinn was staring at me with an expression of deep concern. Pike, he said quietly, did you see that too? See what? For just a moment, when the lights flickered, everyone else disappeared. I looked around the room. Marcus at his communications console, Sarah reviewing logistics reports, Tom coordinating with field offices, Rebecca analyzing medical data. All normal, all present, all working exactly as they should be. But Quinn's frequency analysis equipment was showing something new. A signal pattern that looked exactly like the one we'd seen during the presidential broadcast. And according to the timestamp, it had originated from inside the FEMA building. At exactly the moment the lights had flickered. Day 1, 12 to 1600 hours Eastern Standard Time. FEMA Emergency Operations Center, Mount Weather. The conference room felt smaller with Alandra Crow in it. She sat perfectly straight in the chair across from my desk, her DoD credentials spread like playing cards between us. Level 7 clearance. In 15 years of emergency management, I'd never seen anything above Level 5. Shadow Protocol was implemented during the Eisenhower administration, she said, her voice carrying the flat authority of someone accustomed to being believed without question. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's designed for continuity of government during scenarios that fall outside normal threat assessment parameters. Quinn looked up from his workstation, fingers still dancing across the keyboard. What kind of scenarios? Crow's pause lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. Impossible ones. Through the reinforced windows, I could see the Potomac Valley stretching toward Washington. Somewhere out there, the President of the United States had vanished mid-sentence during a national address. Somewhere out there, the most secure communication networks in the world had gone silent in perfect synchronization. And somewhere in this room, A woman with clearance that shouldn't exist was telling me it was all according to plan. "Walk me through your timeline," I said, pulling up the incident log on my tablet. Everything started at 8 hours 7 minutes and 34 seconds this morning when... 8 hours 7 minutes and 31 seconds. Quinn interrupted without looking up. "I've been running trace analysis on the broadcast interruption. The signal cut occurred 3 seconds before the communication blackouts began propagating through federal networks." Vesowin shifted in her chair near the door. She'd been unusually quiet since Jackson Moore had stormed out an hour ago, muttering about shadow bureaucracies and need-to-know bullshit. But her hand kept drifting to her service weapon, and her eyes tracked every movement Crow made. "The 3-second delay is intentional," Crow said. "Shadow protocol requires confirmation of target acquisition before initiating cascade failures. Someone had to verify the president was secure before communications could be severed." "Secure where?" Wynn finally spoke, her Secret Service training evident in the controlled tension of her voice. "I've contacted every safe house, every secure facility, every protection detail backup location. They're all empty. Not evacuated, empty. Like they were never occupied." I felt that familiar tightness in my chest that came with disasters too big for standard protocols. During Hurricane Katrina, I'd learned to recognize the moment when normal emergency response became inadequate. This felt worse. This felt like the moment when reality itself became inadequate. "Show them what you found," I told Quinn. He swiveled his monitor toward us. The screen displayed a network diagram that looked like a spider web after someone had taken scissors to it. Red nodes marked failed communication points, yellow indicated degraded signals, and green showed active connections. There weren't many green dots left. "This is the federal communication grid as of noon," Quinn said. "Pentagon, CIA, NSA, FBI headquarters, all dark. But look at the pattern of failures." His cursor traced the red nodes in sequence. They formed a rough spiral, starting from the DC metro area and expanding outward like ripples in a pond. "It's not random system failure," he continued. "It's sequential isolation. Each facility was cut off in a specific order, calculated to prevent cross-communication and coordination." Crow leaned forward to study the diagram. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked genuinely interested rather than grimly resigned. "You're military intelligence trained," she said to Quinn. It wasn't a question. "Navy. Cryptologic technician, 6 years before NSA recruited me." "Then you understand operational security. What you're seeing is a controlled demolition of our communication infrastructure, executed with precision that requires intimate knowledge of our most classified systems." The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant rumble of helicopters. Outside, the world continued its normal afternoon routine. Traffic on the highways, planes crossing the sky, life proceeding as if the foundations of government hadn't just dissolved. "There's something else," Wynn said quietly. "The surveillance footage from the White House." She pulled out a tablet and set it on the conference table. The screen showed a familiar corridor. I recognized it from news footage as the path to the Presidential Emergency Operations Center. Timestamp showed 8 hours and 5 minutes. "This is 2 minutes before the broadcast," Wynn explained. "Watch the president's movement." The footage showed a figure in a dark suit walking purposefully down the corridor, flanked by 2 Secret Service agents. The president's face was clearly visible, expression serious but controlled. They approached a heavy door at the end of the corridor. "Now watch what happens at 8 hours 7 minutes and 31 seconds. The timestamp advanced. At exactly 8 hours 7 minutes and 31 seconds, all 3 figures simply stopped walking. Not paused, stopped, as if someone had pressed freeze on a video player. They remained motionless for 7 seconds, then the president turned directly toward the camera and smiled. "That's not possible," I said. "The smile isn't in any previous behavioral profile," Wynn continued. "And this is the last recorded image of the president anywhere in the facility. After this moment, every camera in the White House shows empty corridors. But the doors never opened. No one left." Crow was studying the frozen image with the intensity of someone solving a puzzle. "Shadow protocol requires voluntary compliance for optimal function. Resistance creates complications. What kind of complications? I asked. Instead of answering, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, someone answered. This is Dr. Alandra Crow, DoD Nuclear Safety Division, Authorization 77 Alpha 9. I need immediate confirmation of protocol status. I understand, sir. Yes, I'm aware of the classification level. Thank you. She hung up and looked at each of us in turn. As of 1300 hours, Shadow Protocol has been elevated to Stage 3 implementation. All personnel with Level 6 clearance or above have been extracted to secure locations pending reality stabilization. Reality stabilization? Quinn's voice cracked slightly on the words. The nuclear threat the president was going to announce wasn't from North Korea or Russia or any conventional source, Crow said. For the past 18 months, our government has been investigating phenomena that fall outside accepted physical laws. Temporal anomalies, spatial distortions, information that appears in our databases before anyone enters it. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Virginia countryside. 3 days ago, we detected what our analysts call a cascade probability collapse. Reality itself was becoming unstable around key government installations. The phenomena were spreading, threatening to break down consensus reality entirely. You're talking about... I struggled to find words. You're saying the world is breaking? I'm saying we broke it. Decades of classified research into anomalous phenomena, trying to weaponize things we didn't understand. We pushed too far into territories that human consciousness wasn't meant to explore. Quinn's fingers had stopped moving on his keyboard. Wynn's hand was now resting openly on her weapon. I felt the weight of 15 years of emergency management training proving entirely inadequate for this moment. Shadow Protocol was designed as a last resort, Crow continued. When normal reality becomes too damaged to sustain, key personnel are extracted to a stable baseline and society is adjusted to prevent total collapse. Adjusted how? Wynn asked. Crow turned back to face us, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. By making sure the right people forget the right things. By editing history to remove the dangerous knowledge. By replacing anyone who knows too much with versions of themselves who don't. The implications hit me like a physical blow. The empty facilities aren't empty. They're staffed by people who never learned about the anomalous phenomena, who never pushed the boundaries too far, who never threatened the stability of consensus reality. Quinn was staring at his screen, where new data was appearing in the federal communication grid. More green dots were lighting up, showing restored connections. It's working, he whispered. The networks are coming back online. But something was wrong with his voice. He sounded different, flatter, more mechanical. I looked at Wynn, and she was staring at Quinn with the same growing horror I felt. Quinn, I said carefully, what's the last thing you remember from this morning? He looked up at me with eyes that held no recognition of our conversation about trace analysis and broadcast interruptions and impossible 3-second delays. I remember arriving for my shift at 0800 hours, sir. Standard protocol. Is there a problem? Crow was watching us with the expression of someone who had seen this happen before. Stage 3, she said quietly. Reality editing has begun. Day 1, 16 to 2000 hours Eastern Standard Time. FEMA Emergency Operations Center, Mount Weather. Quinn's transformation was subtle but absolute. He still knew his job, still ran network diagnostics with mechanical precision, but when I asked him about the broadcast interruption pattern he'd discovered, he looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. There was no pattern, sir, he said, eyes focused on his screen. Standard technical malfunction. Redundant systems restored communication within acceptable parameters. Acceptable parameters. Quinn had never used phrases like that before today. Vesewin caught my eye and jerked her head toward the door. We stepped into the corridor, leaving Crow to watch our edited colleague. How long do we have? Wynn whispered. I don't know. Hours? Maybe less. I pulled up the secure communication app on my phone, scrolling through contacts for other emergency coordinators across the region. I need to see how far this has spread. The first 3 calls went straight to voicemail. The 4th was answered by Sarah Chun, FEMA Region 4 coordinator in Atlanta. Sarah, it's Dathan Pike. I need a situation report on. I'm sorry, who is this? Her voice was polite, but completely blank. Pike. Dathan Pike, Mount Weather Emergency Operations. We've worked together for 6 years. You were at my wedding. A pause. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't have any record of a Dathan Pike in the federal system. Are you sure you have the right number? I hung up and immediately tried calling my wife. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. Hello? Jenny, it's me. Are you? I think you have the wrong number. The line went dead. Wynn was watching my face, reading the answers in my expression. How many calls? All of them. My hands were shaking. My own wife doesn't know who I am. But we remember each other. We remember Quinn before he changed. Why are we still? She trailed off, understanding dawning in her eyes. We weren't cleared for the classified programs. We don't know enough to be dangerous. Yet, back in the conference room, Crow was standing at the communications console, entering commands with swift, practiced movements. Multiple screens showed federal networks coming back online across the country: Pentagon, CIA, FBI, NSA. All green lights, all normal operations. Stage 3 implementation proceeding ahead of schedule, she said without looking up. Reality stabilization at 73%. Consensus baseline holding steady. How do you still remember? I asked. If this thing is editing everyone who knows too much, why haven't you been changed? She finally turned to face me, and I saw exhaustion that went bone deep. Because I'm stage 4 personnel. I know how to navigate the editing process without losing core memories. I've done this before. Before? How many times has this happened? 17 documented implementations since 1953. Most were localized, single facilities, individual research projects that went too far. This is the first national-level activation. On the main display screen, news feeds were beginning to restore normal coverage. CNN showed the White House press briefing room, where a familiar figure stood at the podium. That's Press Secretary Williams, Wynn said. But he resigned 3 months ago. Crow nodded. In the edited timeline, he never resigned. The events that caused his resignation never happened because the people who caused them no longer remember being involved. The press briefing was routine. Questions about infrastructure spending, foreign policy, economic indicators. No mention of missing presidents or nuclear threats or nationwide communication failures. As far as the adjusted reality was concerned, it had been a normal Tuesday in American government. My secure phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed Jackson Moore, WHCOS. Jackson. Pike, thank God you're still there. His voice was tight with controlled panic. Something's happening to my staff. Half of them don't remember working on classified projects. They keep asking me about initiatives that were implemented years ago, like they're hearing about them for the first time. Where are you? Undisclosed location. I can't say more over this line, but I need you to coordinate with remaining federal assets. We have reports coming in from across the government. He rattled off a list that made my blood run cold. NORAD was tracking aerial objects with impossible flight characteristics. The CDC had received alerts about a psychological contagion spreading through social media platforms. The Federal Reserve was reporting algorithmic trading patterns that violate causality. It's not stopping with government personnel, Moore continued. Reality distortions are accelerating. We have confirmation that civilians are beginning to experience temporal displacement events. What does that mean? People are remembering things that haven't happened yet, or forgetting things that happened yesterday. The editing process is spreading beyond its intended parameters. I looked at Crow, who was listening to our conversation with growing alarm. That's not supposed to happen, she said. Stage 3 should maintain civilian baseline reality. Moore's voice crackled through speaker static. Whatever your shadow protocol was designed to do, it's not working. The phenomena are getting stronger, not weaker. We have military installations reporting equipment that operates according to physics that don't exist. Through the reinforced windows, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Virginia landscape. But something was wrong with the shadows. They were pointing in different directions, as if multiple suns were casting them simultaneously. Quinn looked up from his workstation with mechanical precision. Sir, I'm receiving multiple priority alerts from FEMA stations nationwide. Coordinators are reporting staff behavioral anomalies, timeline inconsistencies, and equipment malfunctions that defy technical explanation. His voice was still flat, emotionally vacant, but the information he was relaying contradicted everything he'd said about normal operations just minutes before. Quinn, I said carefully, do you remember telling me there was no unusual pattern in this morning's communication failures? He stared at me for exactly 3 seconds. No, sir. Analysis clearly shows coordinated system failures with impossible timing precision. The pattern suggests external manipulation by unknown actors with intimate knowledge of our most classified networks. But 5 minutes ago, you said. 5 minutes ago, I reported standard technical malfunction, which was incorrect. I am experiencing intermittent memory fragmentation consistent with cognitive adjustment protocols. Wynn drew her weapon in one smooth motion, not pointing it at anyone but keeping it ready. He's fighting the editing. Crow was typing frantically at her console. This shouldn't be possible. Individual consciousness shouldn't be able to resist Stage 3 implementation. Unless the individual has already been partially edited, I said, understanding flooding through me. Quinn was changed, but the process didn't take completely. He's existing in both realities simultaneously. Quinn's head snapped toward me with unnatural precision. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist in human speech. Dathan Pike, FEMA Emergency Coordinator. Clearance Level 4. Threat Assessment Minimal. Recommendation: Standard adjustment protocols sufficient for baseline integration. Then, in his normal voice, strained and desperate, Pike, get out of here. The editing isn't just changing memories, it's changing us. I can feel myself disappearing. The lights in the room flickered, and for a split second, I saw double images. Quinn sitting at his workstation, and Quinn standing behind his chair, reaching toward his own head with fingers that passed through matter like smoke. Stage for initiation, Crow whispered. The protocol is adapting. It's beginning to edit reality at the quantum level. My phone erupted with incoming alerts. FEMA stations from Boston to Los Angeles reporting the same phenomena. Personnel existing in multiple states simultaneously, equipment operating according to contradictory physical laws, and reality itself becoming increasingly unstable. How do we stop it? Wynn demanded. Crow was staring at her console screen, where data flowed in patterns that hurt to look at directly. We don't. Shadow Protocol was designed to be irreversible once Stage 4 begins. The only way to stop reality editing is to accept it completely. And if we don't accept it, then reality breaks entirely. No baseline to return to. No consensus for human consciousness to anchor itself to. Complete ontological collapse. The emergency broadcast system activated across every screen in the room. But instead of an official government message, it showed coordinates, latitude and longitude for a location I didn't recognize. Below the coordinates, a single line of text appeared. The convergence protocol is now active. All remaining baseline personnel report for final integration. Quinn looked up at me with eyes that held too much knowledge and too little humanity. That's where they want us to go, he said in both voices simultaneously. Where this all ends. Day 1, 2000 hours, FEMA Emergency Operations Center, Mount Weather. The fluorescent lights above my workstation flickered in a pattern I'd never seen before. 3 quick pulses, pause, 3 more. Not electrical failure. Too regular. Too deliberate. Pike, you seeing this? Wynn's voice carried an edge I hadn't heard since she'd walked into our ops center 12 hours ago. She was staring at the wall-mounted displays showing federal building security feeds across D.C. Every screen showed the same impossible thing. Empty corridors, vacant offices, unmanned security checkpoints. Not abandoned, empty. Coffee cups still steaming on desks. Elevators frozen mid-floor with doors standing open. Computer screens glowing with half-finished emails, cursors blinking in empty sentences. But the timestamp logs showed normal occupancy levels. Badge scans, biometric readers, turnstiles, all registering thousands of personnel going about their daily routines in buildings that our cameras showed as deserted as tombs. Mailer, run those security feeds again. I called to Quinn, but he was already bent over his terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard with the focused intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle that was solving itself around him. "Sir, this is..." He paused, and I heard something in that pause that made my stomach clench. "The metadata says these feeds are live. Current timestamp, no playback indicators. But look at this." He pulled up the Pentagon's main entrance camera. The wide shot showed the familiar limestone facade, the parade of black sedans and military vehicles that should have been flowing in and out during evening shift change. Instead, nothing. Empty driveways, vacant guard posts, the American flag hanging limp in still air. Now watch the badge reader logs for the same timestamp. Numbers cascaded down his secondary monitor. Entry events, exit events, a steady stream of ID badges being scanned at the exact doors we were watching stand empty. Jackson Moore pushed away from the conference table, where he'd been hunched over his secure phone for the last hour, trying to reach anyone in the cabinet. The chief of staff looked like he'd aged a decade since morning. His normally pristine suit was wrinkled, tie loosened, and there was a tremor in his hands when he reached for his coffee. "I've tried 17 different contact protocols," he said, voice hoarse. "Defense, state, treasury, justice, even the goddamn White House mess staff. Either the lines are completely dead, or I get someone who claims to be whoever I'm calling, but they don't know me. Don't know anything about the morning's events. Don't know why I'm calling them by the wrong name." Elandra Crow looked up from the thick manual she'd been studying, the one with the cover marked Shadow Protocol. Eyes only, cosmic clearance. Her face was pale, but her voice stayed steady. "That's because they're not the same people." "What the hell does that mean?" Moore snapped. "It means Shadow Protocol isn't designed to protect government personnel from external threats." Crow closed the manual carefully, like she was handling something that might explode. "It's designed to extract them when they become threats to baseline reality." The fluorescent lights flickered again. This time, all of them, throughout the entire operations center. 3 pulses, pause, 3 more. "Dathan," Wynn said quietly, "look at your emergency alert system." I turned to the master console that controlled the emergency alert system, the network that could push warnings to every TV, radio, and cell phone in America. The system I'd used hundreds of times for weather emergencies, Amber Alerts, the occasional test that made everyone's phones buzz with that distinctive tone. The system was active, broadcasting, had been for the last 37 minutes, according to the timestamp. But I hadn't activated it. "What's it sending?" My mouth felt dry. Quinn's fingers danced across his keyboard. "Coordinates. Just coordinates, repeating every 15 seconds. 37.2431 degrees north, 115.7930 degrees west." I knew those coordinates. Every emergency management professional in the country knew them, even if we weren't supposed to. Groom Lake, Nevada. Area 51. The most classified military installation in the United States. And this. Quinn pulled up the audio feed. Through the speakers came a voice I didn't recognize, calm, professional, with the measured cadence of someone reading from a script. "The convergence protocol is now active. All designated personnel report to specified coordinates for immediate processing. The convergence protocol is now active. All designated personnel report to specified coordinates for immediate processing." "I've never heard of any convergence protocol," I said. "Because you weren't supposed to." Crow opened the manual again, flipped to a page near the back. "Shadow Protocol has 17 sub-operations. Convergence is Phase 4, comprehensive personnel extraction." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Not the air conditioning, something deeper. The kind of cold that comes from understanding that the world you thought you knew was just the surface of something much larger and more terrible. "Extracted to where?" Wynn asked. "That's the problem," Crow said. "According to this, they're not extracted to anywhere. They're extracted from." The secure phone on my desk rang. Not the ordinary ring, the priority alert tone reserved for imminent catastrophic events. I'd heard it exactly 4 times in my career. During 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, the 2011 Japan tsunami, and the 2017 Las Vegas shooting. I picked up the handset. "Pike, FEMA Emergency Operations." "Mr. Pike, This is Director Harrison, NSA. I need you to listen very carefully. I knew Director Harrison, had briefed him personally during the hurricane season planning meetings. But the voice on the phone was wrong. Same cadence, same slight southern accent, but there was something hollow about it, like an echo of the man I'd met. Sir, I'm going to need you to verify your identity through the standard protocols. Mr. Pike, there's no time for protocols. Shadow Protocol has been compromised. You and your team need to evacuate Mount Weather immediately and report to the coordinates being broadcast on the emergency alert system. Sir, I'm showing that broadcast is unauthorized. I didn't initiate. The broadcast is authorized under my direct authority. Report to coordinates immediately. That's a direct order. The line went dead. Quinn was staring at his screen with an expression I'd never seen before. Not confusion, not fear, but something like recognition. Like someone who'd just solved a puzzle and didn't like the answer. The NSA internal directory, he said slowly. Director Harrison died in a car accident 3 months ago. His replacement is Director Chin. Has been for 94 days. That's impossible, Moore said. I had lunch with Harrison last week. According to the records, Quinn's voice was barely above a whisper. Director Harrison never existed. The NSA shows no record of anyone by that name ever holding any position in the agency. I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest, like the moment in an earthquake when you realize the ground isn't solid anymore. When you understand that everything you thought was permanent is actually floating on something vast and unstable. How many other people do we know who might not exist? I asked. Quinn was already running searches. His screen filled with personnel records, photographs, organizational charts. As we watched, entries began changing. Names disappearing. Photos fading. Entire departments restructuring themselves in real time. The president, Quinn said suddenly. Show me the president's record. The search returned no results. Try the vice president. No results. Speaker of the House. No results. Jesus Christ, Moore whispered. The entire chain of succession. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing the operations center in red light. In that brief moment of total darkness, I could have sworn I heard something. Not a sound, exactly, but something like the absence of sound. Like the moment when you realize you've been listening to a hum you never noticed until it stops. When the lights came back, Quinn was gone. Not left the room gone. Not stepped away from his desk gone. Gone. His chair was still warm. His coffee cup was still full. His keyboard still glowed with the half-typed search query he'd been entering when the lights went out. But there was no sign he'd ever been there. No personal effects on his desk. No family photos. No jacket hanging on the back of his chair. Quinn was on her feet, hand moving instinctively toward her sidearm. Where's Quinn? Who? Moore asked. I stared at him. Mailer Quinn. NSA analyst. He's been here all day. He was just. Pike, there's no one here but the 4 of us. There's never been anyone else. But I could see the confusion in his eyes, the way he was looking around the room like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten. The way you look when you walk into a room and can't remember what you came there for. Crow was flipping through the Shadow Protocol manual with increasing urgency. Phase 5, she said. Real-time personnel adjustment. They're not just extracting people anymore. They're editing them out, making it so they never existed in the first place. That's impossible, Quinn said, but her voice lacked conviction. Look at the security cameras, I said. On the wall screens, the federal buildings were no longer empty. They were filled with people. Thousands of people, all going about their normal routines. But none of them were people I recognized. None of them were the faces I'd seen in those same buildings for the past 15 years. The emergency alert system was still broadcasting the coordinates. But now there was something else mixed in with the audio, a low-frequency tone that seemed to resonate in my bones. The kind of sound that made you want to stop thinking and just follow instructions. We need to leave, I said. Now. Where can we go? Moore asked. If they can edit people out of existence, nowhere is safe. The coordinates, Crow said. That's where they want us to go. That's where everyone's being gathered. So we don't go there. But what if that's exactly what they expect us to do? What if avoiding the coordinates is part of the protocol too? The red emergency lighting flickered again. 3 pulses, pause, 3 more. Through the speakers, the broadcast continued. The convergence protocol is now active. All designated personnel report to specified coordinates for immediate processing. But now I could hear something else in that voice. Something I'd missed before because I hadn't been listening for it. It was my voice. Slightly distorted, processed through some kind of filter, but unmistakably me. I was the one broadcasting the order for everyone to report to the coordinates, which meant that somewhere, somewhen, a version of me had already been extracted, processed, and was now being used to gather the rest of us. I looked at Wynn, at Crow, at Moore. How do we know we're still real? None of them answered. Because there was no answer. Because once you start questioning the reality of your own existence, every thought becomes suspect. Every memory becomes questionable. Every decision becomes potentially programmed. The fluorescent lights came back on, steady and normal. The red emergency lighting shut off. The operations center looked exactly as it had 12 hours ago when this all started. Except now I noticed things I hadn't seen before. My nameplate on the desk read D. Pike, Emergency Coordinator. But I could have sworn it used to say Dathan Pike, Regional Director. The photographs on the wall showed FEMA response teams I didn't recognize, at disasters I couldn't remember, with officials whose names I knew but whose faces looked wrong. And on my desk, next to my secure phone, was a travel itinerary I'd never seen before. Flight to Las Vegas, departing tomorrow morning. Ground transportation to coordinates in Nevada. My signature was at the bottom, in my handwriting, but I had no memory of signing it. The convergence protocol was active, and I was beginning to suspect it had been active for a very long time. Day 2 to 1430 hours. The bunker's ventilation system hums with mechanical persistence, a sound that's become both comfort and torment over the past 18 hours. I'm rationing our MREs, 14 meals for 4 people, maybe 5 days if we're careful. The irony isn't lost on me that I've coordinated disaster relief for thousands, and now I'm counting freeze-dried beef stew packets like they're gold bars. Wynn checks the perimeter sensors for the 3rd time this hour. Old habits from the service, she says, but I can see the tension in her shoulders. She's protecting a principal who no longer exists, securing a facility that officially has no personnel. The psychological weight of purposelessness is something no training manual covers. Still nothing on channels 7 through 12. Quinn reports from his station, headphones clamped over ears that haven't slept since the extractions began. His technical skills are keeping us connected to whatever's left of the outside world, but each report brings more impossible news. According to every major network, the government is functioning normally. Secretary Hendricks gave a press briefing this morning, the same Hendricks whose office I watched empty out through security feeds 48 hours ago. Moore sits in the corner, studying classified files Crow pulled from the archives. The man who once scheduled meetings with foreign dignitaries now looks like he's aged a decade. Listen to this, he says, voice hollow. Project Baseline, 1978. Quote, personnel exhibiting level 5 anomaly awareness will undergo immediate extraction and memory reconstruction to maintain operational security of consensus reality. End quote. They've been doing this for decades, Crow confirms, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. She's cross-referencing extraction patterns, building databases of the disappeared. Every time someone in government discovered something that didn't fit, UFO evidence, time paradoxes, impossible archaeological finds, Shadow Protocol quietly removed them. The scope is staggering. I pull up personnel records on my tablet, searching for patterns Quinn identified. Dr. Sarah Chun, EPA, investigated water samples that predated the geological layer they came from, transferred to private sector in 2019. Major Rodriguez, Army Corps of Engineers, reported structural impossibilities in classified facilities, medical discharge for stress-related conditions in 2021. The list goes on. Dathan, when calls from the security station, voice tight. You need to see this. The external cameras show Pennsylvania Avenue at rush hour, normal traffic, normal pedestrians, normal life. But something's wrong with the White House footage. I've stared at that building through countless emergency conferences, memorized every window and security checkpoint. The architecture is subtly different. Windows where walls should be. A wing that extends too far east. The building changed, I breathe. No, Crow corrects grimly. The building is being corrected. Reality is editing itself to match the new personnel. If these replacement officials remember working in a White House with different architecture, then that's the White House that exists now. Quinn suddenly straightens, hand pressed to his headphone. Wait, I'm getting something on the emergency frequency. It's Sarah Morrison from HHS. Morrison. I know that name. We coordinated pandemic response protocols last year. Competent, thorough, unflappable. If she's still out there. Coordinates are 38.9072 degrees north, 77.0369 degrees west. Repeat, any federal personnel not affected by protocol extraction, we're gathering at the specified coordinates. We have food, communications equipment, and answers. If you can hear this, you're not alone. The coordinates put the gathering site at the reflecting pool, right on the National Mall. Public space, symbolic location, tactical nightmare for anyone trying to maintain covert operations. Either Morrison's smarter than the protocol's designers, or it's exactly the trap Crow warned us about. It could be legitimate, Moore argues. Morrison's good people. If there are other survivors. Or, when interrupts, it's how the protocol identifies remaining personnel for extraction. Honey trap, gathering the insects in one location for elimination. I run the logistics in my head automatically. Emergency management protocols die hard. Distance to target, 2.3 miles through urban terrain. Travel time on foot, 45 minutes with tactical movement. Risk assessment, catastrophically high. Potential intelligence value, immeasurable. We need more information, I decide. Quinn, can you establish two-way contact without revealing our location? Maybe. Give me 20 minutes to set up a signal bounce. While Quinn works his technical magic, I inventory our resources with the grim efficiency of someone who's managed too many disasters. For Glock 19's courtesy of wind service contacts, 96 rounds total. Basic survival gear, medical supplies, enough water for 6 days. One armored SUV in the motor pool, assuming the keycard still works and the vehicle hasn't been edited into non-existence. The real question isn't what we have, it's what we are. For people who slipped through the cracks of the most sophisticated reality editing operation in human history. Are we survivors or just delayed targets? Contact established, Quinn announces. Morrison's voice, but I'm running it through analysis software. Speech patterns, background audio, everything. Morrison's voice crackles through our speakers, distorted by Quinn's security measures, but unmistakably her. FEMA emergency operations? Thank God. Dathan, is that you? Confirmed. Morrison, what's your status? 18 personnel confirmed unextracted. Mix of civilian and military, all with one thing in common. We were investigating anomalies before the protocol activated. Someone wanted us to find each other, Dathan. The coordinates, the emergency broadcast frequency, it's too convenient to be coincidence. Crow leans forward. Ask her about the facilities she's investigated. Morrison, what kind of anomalies were you tracking? Static fills the channel for long seconds. When Morrison responds, her voice carries a weight I recognize from delivering casualty reports. Time displacement events at medical facilities. Patients arriving before they were injured. Surgical procedures completing before they began. The impossible becoming routine, and everyone just adapting to it. My blood chills. Reality isn't just being edited. It's been broken for longer than anyone realized. Shadow Protocol isn't maintaining normal reality. It's maintaining the illusion of normal reality while impossibilities proliferate beneath the surface. There's something else, Morrison continues. The extraction patterns, they're not random. Every person taken had clearance for projects involving temporal anomalies or dimensional inconsistencies. Someone's been feeding this information to the protocol for years, identifying targets. Wind catches my eye, and I see my own realization reflected there. We're not just survivors, we're witnesses to the systematic cover-up of reality breakdown. The question isn't whether we should meet Morrison's group. The question is whether we're already too late to stop whatever's coming next. Morrison, I transmit, we're coming to you. But we're not coming unarmed, and we're not coming trusting. If this is a trap, understood. And Dathan, bring everything you have on Shadow Protocol, because we've figured out what triggers the extractions. The channel goes dead, leaving us in the humming silence of our concrete sanctuary. For people with the weight of reality on our shoulders, about to walk into either salvation or the final phase of our own disappearance. I check my weapon, verify the tactical gear when distributed, and prepare to lead my team into the unknown. It's what emergency coordinators do. We move toward the disaster, not away from it. Even when the disaster is the systematic erasure of truth itself. Day 2 to 1600 hours, departure imminent. Day 3 to 2:30 hours. The reflecting pool stretches before us like a black mirror, Washington Monument stabbing into the starless sky beyond. 18 hours since we left the bunker. 6 hours since we lost Quinn. I keep replaying it. The abandoned Smithsonian building Morrison's group was using as a staging area. Quinn volunteering for reconnaissance because his technical skills could identify electronic surveillance. The security camera footage showing him walking through the main entrance, crossing the lobby, approaching the elevator bank. And then nothing. Not disappearing. That would imply he was ever there. The footage simply shows an empty lobby, has always shown an empty lobby. When I checked my phone for his contact information, the number wasn't there. When asked about our technical specialist, I had to think for 30 seconds before remembering we'd ever had one. Reality is editing itself around his absence, and we're losing the memory of him in real time. Dathan. Wynn's voice cuts through my spiral. She's positioned behind a concrete barrier, rifle trained on the building's approaches. Morrison's people are moving. 18 figures emerge from the Smithsonian, but something's wrong with how they move. Too synchronized, too purposeful. When Morrison speaks through the radio, her voice carries the same inflection patterns, but there's something hollow underneath, like an actor who's learned the lines but not the emotion. FEMA team, we're ready for debrief. Approach Vector Alpha, weapons secured but visible. Standard procedure words, but Morrison never used military terminology in our previous coordination meetings. She was CDC, civilian through and through. The woman speaking to us learned those phrases somewhere else. It's not her, Crow whispers. The extraction got Morrison's group, and now we're talking to their replacements. Moore's face goes ashen in the green glow of our night vision. Jesus Christ. They're not just removing people, they're replacing them with versions that never learned the truth. The tactical situation is clear. 18 armed personnel with unknown intentions, superior position, home field advantage. We have surprise, mobility, and the knowledge that we're walking into a trap. In any normal emergency, I'd order immediate withdrawal. But this isn't normal, and retreat might not even be possible. The streets we traveled to get here look different now. Shop fronts that weren't there before, street signs with names I don't recognize. Reality is shifting around us, and our escape routes are being edited out of existence. Quinn was right, I realize aloud. Before we lost him, he said the protocol doesn't just extract people. It identifies information that's too dangerous for baseline reality. Knowledge that could break the whole system. What kind of knowledge? Wynn asks, though her eyes never leave the building. Crow's tablet screen flickers, displaying files that shouldn't exist. Time paradoxes, causal loops, evidence that reality has multiple layers, and we've been living in an artificial one maintained by constant editing. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Every disaster I've managed, every emergency response I've coordinated, how many were real, and how many were cover stories for reality failures? Hurricane patterns that defied meteorology, earthquake epicenters that moved between measurements, missing persons cases where the people had never existed in the first place. Morrison is approaching our position now, flanked by figures whose faces I should recognize but don't. Federal personnel I've worked with for years, but their features keep shifting in my peripheral vision, as if my brain knows they're wrong but can't process how. FEMA Emergency Coordination, this is HHS Incident Command, the Morrison Thing broadcasts. You are experiencing temporal displacement anxiety, due to proximity to a Class 7 reality anomaly. Lower your weapons and approach for immediate medical assessment. Temporal displacement anxiety. That's not a real condition. But the way she says it, with clinical certainty, makes part of my mind want to believe it. Maybe we are confused. Maybe the last 3 days have been some kind of breakdown. Maybe Quinn never existed, and I'm just suffering from stress-induced false memories. The doubt creeps in like poison, and I realize this is how the protocol works. Not through force, but through making victims question their own reality until they accept the edited version. No, I say firmly, as much to myself as to my team. Whatever's standing down there wearing Morrison's face, it's not her. The real Morrison would never use that terminology. Wynn nods grimly. Rules of engagement, Chief? Before I can answer, Moore stands up from cover, hands raised. This is insane. We're federal employees hiding from other federal employees because we think reality is being edited by some shadow protocol that might not even exist. Jackson, get down. Crow hisses, but it's too late. The Morrison thing turns toward Moore with mechanical precision. Chief of Staff Morrison, you are experiencing severe psychological distress due to exposure to anomalous phenomena. Please approach for immediate extraction and memory reconstruction. Chief of Staff Morrison? Moore laughs bitterly. I'm Jackson Moore, White House Chief of Staff. Morrison is CDC, not, wait. I watch the color drain from his face as he processes what the thing said. In the edited reality, Morrison holds his position. The woman he thought he knew was actually his replacement, which means the real Morrison was extracted weeks ago, Moore whispers. I've been working with a replacement for God knows how long, and I never noticed. The Morrison thing begins walking toward us with measured steps. The other figures spread out in standard tactical formation, too standard, like they're following a textbook rather than adapting to terrain. Jackson Moore, White House Chief of Staff, Security Clearance Level 8, Anomaly Awareness Level 7, the thing recites. You have been scheduled for immediate extraction and memory reconstruction. Please comply. Anomaly Awareness Level 7, Crow breathes. That's the threshold. Quinn told us. Level 5 was enough for extraction in the old documents, but the system's been escalating. They're letting people learn more before removing them. Why? Wynn demands, finger on trigger. Because the anomalies are getting worse, I realize. They need people with higher awareness levels to function in increasingly broken reality. But when someone learns too much, Moore takes a step toward the Morrison thing, and I see the defeat in his posture. 3 days ago, he was coordinating with foreign dignitaries. Now he's questioning whether anyone he's ever known actually existed. Maybe it's better, he says quietly. Maybe forgetting is easier than living with this knowledge. Jackson, no. Wynn shouts, but Moore is already walking toward the extraction team. I make the hardest decision of my emergency management career. Let him go. Wynn spins on me. Chief. Look at him. He wants to forget. And if we try to stop this by force, we lose tactical advantage and probably get extracted ourselves. My voice cracks. Sometimes in emergency management, you have to accept losses to save who you can. We watch from concealment as Moore approaches the Morrison thing. She places a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that looks compassionate but moves with mechanical precision. There's no visible technology, no obvious procedure. Moore simply becomes less. His posture straightens, confusion clears from his face, and when he turns back toward our position, he looks through us like we're not there. Area secure, he reports to the Morrison thing in a voice that sounds exactly like his but carries no recognition of the past 3 days. No federal personnel detected. False alarm on the emergency frequency. They withdraw into the building, leaving us alone with the knowledge that our former colleague now remembers a completely different version of recent events. In his mind, he probably just finished a routine security sweep and found nothing. We can't save people who don't want to be saved, I tell my remaining team, though the words taste like ash. And we can't fight an enemy that edits reality itself. Crow's tablet chimes softly. New files are appearing. Personnel records for people who never existed, emergency protocols for disasters that never happened, organizational charts for agencies that were never founded. It's accelerating, she says. The more we learn, the more reality has to change to accommodate our knowledge. We're not just witnesses to the cover-up anymore. We're causing it. Wynne shoulders her rifle. So what do? I look back at the building where 18 federal employees are settling in for what they believe is routine emergency duty. People doing their jobs, serving their country, protecting their reality. The only difference is that their reality is a lie. We find Quinn, I say finally. If he's really in editing space, like he warned us, he might be the only one who understands how this system works. And if we can't find him, then we learn to live as ghosts in our own world. Because the alternative is forgetting who we really are. As we retreat into the Washington night, I can't shake the feeling that Moore made the rational choice. Ignorance might not be bliss, but it's certainly easier than carrying the weight of impossible truth. But someone has to remember. Someone has to know what we've lost. Even if reality itself wants to forget. Day 3 to 4, 15 hours, personnel count, 3. Day 4, 14:30 hours, FEMA Emergency Operations Bunker. Personnel remaining, Pike, Wynne, Moore, Crow. The silence where Quinn should be sitting is driving me insane. Not just his absence, the fact that my mind keeps skipping over the empty chair like it's perfectly normal. Wynne keeps count by marking the wall, but even she admits the number feels wrong sometimes. Crow finally broke this morning. Found her in the server room, surrounded by printouts and classified files she'd been hiding since day one. When I asked what she was really doing here, she just looked at me with those hollow eyes and said, "Dathan, what if I told you the nuclear threat was real, but not from who you think? I'd say you need to start talking. Now." She spread the documents across the table. Top secret stamps everywhere, classification levels I'd never seen. Project names that sounded like science fiction, baseline maintenance, consensus engineering, reality stabilization protocol. "Shadow protocol isn't what I told you," she said. "It's not about government continuity. It's about reality continuity." Moore laughed, that bitter sound he's been making since his authority evaporated. "Reality? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Crow said, pulling out a thick folder marked with symbols I didn't recognize, "that for the past 70 years, our government has been researching things that shouldn't exist. And every time someone gets too close to the truth, Shadow Protocol activates to adjust the situation." The documents were insane. Research into temporal anomalies, contact with non-terrestrial intelligences, projects studying what they called consensus reality breakdown, all stamped with clearance levels that apparently existed above anything I'd ever heard of. "These are fake," Wynne said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Has to be. Check the metadata. Cross-reference the signatures. I've been investigating this for 3 years." Crow's hands shook as she turned pages. "Ever notice how certain government programs just disappear from public record? Officials who get reassigned and their colleagues forget they ever existed." I had noticed. In 15 years of emergency management, you see patterns. Disasters that get classified retroactively. Evacuations that officially never happened. Personnel transfers that leave no forwarding information. "The nuclear threat was real," Crow continued. "But it wasn't from Russia or China or North Korea. It was from us, from what we'd been studying. Reality was starting to break down around certain research facilities. People were seeing impossible things, experiencing events that couldn't be verified, having memories of places that didn't exist." She pulled out photographs, satellite images showing buildings that appeared normal from above, but cast shadows in impossible directions. GPS logs showing personnel entering facilities and emerging at locations hundreds of miles away. Surveillance footage of people walking through walls. Shadow Protocol was designed as a last resort. When reality destabilization reaches critical mass, it extracts personnel with dangerous knowledge and replaces them with versions of themselves who never learned what they learned. "That's impossible," Moore said, but he was studying the documents now. I could see recognition in his eyes. "You knew about this," I said. He nodded slowly. "Not the specifics, but I'd been getting reports about impossible incidents. Staff members with perfect security clearances who had no record of the projects they claimed to be working on. Budget allocations for programs that didn't exist. I thought it was corruption, maybe espionage. I never imagined." "Imagined what?" that we've been playing with forces that could unravel existence itself. Crow's voice cracked. The president wasn't kidnapped or killed, Dathan. He was extracted, along with everyone else who'd accumulated too much knowledge about what we've really been doing. I felt something cold crawling up my spine. Then who's running the government now? Versions of them that never learned the dangerous truths. Clean copies, you might say. They remember their entire lives, their training, their relationships, but edited. Optimized for baseline reality maintenance. Wynn was studying her phone, scrolling through news feeds. Government's functioning normally. President gave a speech yesterday about the successful resolution of the nuclear crisis through diplomatic channels. Same man, same voice, but he's never heard of any of the projects that were destabilizing reality, Crow finished. Clean slate. Safe. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Our families, everyone we know, probably adjusted too to maintain consistency. Your wife thinks you work for a different department now, doesn't she? One with less security clearance, less access to sensitive information. She was right. When I'd tried calling home yesterday, Sarah had been confused about my FEMA position, insisted I worked for some consulting firm I'd never heard of. This is why Quinn disappeared, I said. Not disappeared, edited out. And why we're still here, Crow said. We weren't read into the deep programs. Our knowledge level wasn't dangerous enough to trigger automatic extraction. But now that we know, as if summoned by her words, the lights flickered. Not a power fluctuation, something else. The air itself seemed to thicken, and for a moment I could swear I heard Quinn's voice, distant and echoing. Pike, can you hear me? I'm in the editing space. Between what was and what they're making it become. They're coming for you now. The final phase, they're going to revise everything. The whole society, not just government. Clean slate for everyone. Wynn grabbed my arm. Did you hear that? Quinn. I called out. Where are you? The lights stabilized, but Quinn's voice continued, growing fainter. They can't maintain individual edits forever. Too much energy. So they're going to reset everything at once. Make it so the dangerous knowledge never existed in the first place. No anomalous research, no reality breakdown, no shadow protocol. Just normal history. When? Crow shouted. Soon. Maybe hours. You have to warn people. Get the truth out before they edit it away permanently. But Pike, if you succeed, if people learn the truth all at once, it might break everything anyway. Reality's more fragile than you know. The voice faded to nothing, leaving us in silence. Moore was the first to speak. So we have a choice. Let them rewrite history to keep reality stable, or try to preserve the truth and risk breaking everything ourselves. No choice at all, Wynn said grimly. Truth matters, even if it's dangerous. But looking at the documents scattered across the table, evidence of decades of impossible research, of a government that had apparently made contact with forces beyond human understanding, I wasn't sure anymore. How many people could handle learning that their entire understanding of reality was a carefully maintained illusion? The lights flickered again, and this time I could feel it, something vast and incomprehensible turning its attention toward us. The shadow protocol, realizing we'd learned too much. We need to move, I said. If we're going to warn anyone, it has to be now. But even as I said it, I could feel my memories starting to blur at the edges. The documents on the table seemed less important. The conversation we'd just had less urgent. Fighting to hold on to the truth was like trying to grasp smoke. Whatever we were going to do, we had to do it fast. Before we forgot why it mattered. Before we forgot there had ever been anything to remember. Day 5, 3:45 hours, FEMA Emergency Operations Bunker. Personnel status, critical. The emergency broadcast system access codes are burned into my memory now. 15 years of crisis management finally paying off in ways I never imagined. Wynn has the tactical situation mapped. 3 routes to the transmission center, 2 of them already showing adjustment activity on our remaining sensors. Crow's hands shake as she calibrates the reality filters she's jury-rigged from classified equipment. This should let us broadcast through their interference patterns, she says, but doubt colors every word. Should isn't good enough when you're trying to warn the world before reality gets rewritten. Moore stands by the bunker door, looking like he's aged a decade in 5 days. "Jackson, I say, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." He shakes his head. 30 years in government, and I never understood what we were really protecting people from. Maybe it's time I actually served the public interest instead of just talking about it. The lights flicker again, not electrical failure, but something far worse. Through the bunker's reinforced walls, I can hear it, the sound of reality being edited. A low humming that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, punctuated by moments of absolute silence where existence itself holds its breath. "They're accelerating the process," Crow says, reading her instruments. "The final phase starts in less than an hour. After that, anyone who remembers the truth about anomalous research, shadow protocol, any of it, will just cease to be problems." Wynn checks her sidearm, though we all know bullets won't help against what's coming for us. "These adjustment agents, what exactly are they?" "Not sure they're they in any sense we'd understand," Crow replies. "More like antibodies in the reality immune system. They don't want to hurt us, just edit us into compliance. Make us forget, change our histories so we never learn dangerous truths in the first place." Quinn's voice crackles through the speakers again, weaker than before. "Pike, the editing space is collapsing. They're pulling everything back into baseline. But I can see the transmission routes from here. I can guide you." "Quinn, how are you even?" "Don't think about it too hard. The paradox might break what's left of my coherence. Listen, the broadcast system has a failsafe I helped design years ago. If you can reach the primary transmission hub and input the emergency authentication codes simultaneously across all networks, you can override their reality filters for exactly 93 seconds. 93 seconds to warn the world about 70 years of impossible government research. To tell people their reality has been carefully curated to keep them safe from truths that could break their minds." "That's not enough time," Wynn says. "It has to be," I reply, "because the alternative is letting everyone live in a lie forever." Moore opens the bunker door. Beyond it, the corridor looks normal except for the way shadows fall upward and the emergency lighting casts darkness instead of illumination. "The things you see out there," Crow warns, "don't try to understand them. Just keep moving." We move in tactical formation, Wynn leading with her Secret Service training, me in the middle with the broadcast codes, Crow bringing up the rear with her reality-sensing equipment. Moore takes point toward the transmission center. The first adjustment agent appears at the T-junction ahead, a figure that looks almost human until you notice it has too many dimensions, casting shadows that extend into directions that shouldn't exist. It doesn't attack, just stands there radiating a presence that whispers, "This knowledge is dangerous. Let us help you forget." "Don't listen," Wynn shouts, but I can already feel the temptation. How much easier would it be to let them edit away everything we've learned? To go back to believing in a simple world where the government studies normal things and reality follows consistent rules? Moore breaks from formation, running straight at the agent. 30 years of serving lies," he shouts. "Time to serve truth for once." The agent reaches for him with hands that exist in too many places at once, and Moore changes. Not vanishing like Quinn, but becoming simplified. His face loses the lines of stress and doubt. His posture straightens with renewed faith in institutional authority. For a moment he looks at us with complete confusion, as if wondering what we're doing in a restricted area. Then he blinks and determination returns. Whatever they just tried, it didn't take completely. "Go. I'll buy you time." He tackles the agent, and both figures become unstable, flickering between states of existence. We run. The transmission center door is sealed with locks I've never seen before. Not electronic, but something that seems to exist partially outside normal space. Crow pulls out tools that probably shouldn't work according to physics, while Wynn covers our backs and I prepare the broadcast codes. "Pike," Quinn's voice barely audible now, "they're adapting. The reality filters are learning from our attempts to bypass them. You'll get one chance, maybe less." More agents appear in the corridor behind us, moving with that unsettling not-quite motion that makes my eyes water. Wynn fires her weapon, and the bullets pass through them without effect, but the sound seems to cause them confusion, as if unexpected noise interferes with their editing processes. "Got it," Crow says as the door dissolves rather than opening. Beyond is a room full of equipment that definitely wasn't in the original FEMA building blueprints. Devices that hum with that same reality editing frequency we've been hearing all week. I plug into the emergency broadcast system, while Crow works to disable the reality filters. The screens around us show normal programming, morning news, weather reports, all presenting a world where the government crisis has been peacefully resolved through diplomatic channels. Filters are down, Crow announces. But they're fighting back. You've got maybe 60 seconds before they adapt. I key in the authentication codes, feeling the weight of everything we've learned. In less than a minute, I'll have to summarize 70 years of impossible government research, explain that reality itself has been curated to protect public sanity, and warn people that their memories might be about to be edited. The broadcast begins. This is Dathan Pike, FEMA Emergency Operations Coordinator. If you're hearing this, your government has been maintaining consensus reality through a program called Shadow Protocol. For decades, we've been researching phenomena that could destabilize existence itself, and when personnel learn too much, they're edited out of reality and replaced with safer versions. 30 seconds left. Right now, Shadow Protocol is preparing to edit everyone's memories to remove all trace of anomalous research. You may forget this broadcast, forget this warning, forget that reality was ever anything other than what they tell you it is. The agents are in the room now, reaching for us with hands that promise peaceful forgetting. When empties her clip at them, not to cause damage but to create noise interference. 15 seconds. If you remember hearing this after everything goes back to normal, find others who remember. Document what you can. Reality is more fragile than you know, but truth. The filters slam back into place, cutting the transmission. Around us, the agents pause, as if listening to something we can't hear. Then they begin to fade. It's done, Crow says quietly. The final phase is starting. They're pulling back to implement the global edit. Through the facility's windows, we can see the sky shimmering like heat waves, reality itself preparing to be rewritten. In a few minutes, none of this will have happened. The government will never have researched impossible phenomena. Shadow Protocol will never have existed. And we'll wake up in a world where our current memories feel like a strange dream. But for 93 seconds, the truth was broadcast to anyone who was listening. It might not be enough to stop the edit, but maybe, just maybe, it's enough to ensure that some people will remember when the new normal settles into place. Quinn's voice, faint as a whisper. 93 seconds of truth against 70 years of lies. It's not much, but it's something. See you on the other side, Pike. If there is another side, the shimmering intensifies, and I feel my memories starting to blur. Soon I'll forget why I'm here, forget what we discovered, forget that reality was ever anything other than what the edited history tells me it was. But somewhere, buried deep, maybe I'll remember that once upon a time, a few government employees tried to warn the world that truth matters more than comfortable lies. Even if nobody believes them. Day 7, FEMA Emergency Operations Center. Official Incident Report Number 2847 Alpha. Filed by D. Pike, Emergency Coordination Specialist. The headache started 3 days ago. Dr. Martinez says it's residual effects from the carbon monoxide leak in Bunker C7. Funny thing about gas leaks, they make you remember things that never happened. I'm typing this report because protocol demands it. Official record shows equipment malfunction caused temporary psychological episode affecting 5 personnel. We were found unconscious after ventilation system failure. Standard procedure. Nothing unusual. Except VESA when doesn't work for FEMA. Never has, according to HR. They have no record of Secret Service agent when requesting facility access. Security badges show she was never here. But I remember her tactical expertise. Remember her saving our lives when the adjustment agents. Equipment malfunction. Hallucinations from oxygen deprivation. Jackson Moore died in the incident. Heart attack brought on by carbon monoxide exposure. Funeral was yesterday. Closed casket. His wife thanked me for trying to save him, said he spoke of me often. Funny thing, Jackson Moore was Deputy Assistant Director of Emergency Planning, not White House Chief of Staff. Never worked in the West Wing. His security clearance was level 3, not the level 8 I remember. Gas-induced false memories. Grandiose delusions are common. Elandra Crow returned to her position at Department of Energy. Nuclear Safety Inspector, exactly as her badge always said. She nodded when we passed in the hall yesterday, professional courtesy between federal employees. Her eyes held something else though. Recognition? Warning? I wanted to ask about Shadow Protocol. The words wouldn't come, like trying to speak underwater. No such protocol exists. Reviewed all DoD continuity programs. None match delusional episode content. The president gave a press conference this morning about the successful diplomatic resolution of the brief international nuclear concern. Clean-shaven, confident, exactly as he should be. I watched his hands while he spoke, no nervous gestures, no tells. Perfect presidential bearing. Too perfect. Paranoid ideation. Common aftermath of psychological trauma. My wife made my favorite dinner last night. Pot roast, exactly how I like it. She asked about my work, listened to my carefully edited account of the gas leak incident. Sympathetic, supportive, loving. Everything a wife should be. She's been making pot roast every night for a week. Same recipe, same timing, same concerned questions about my health. Yesterday she asked if I remembered our anniversary. June 15th, I said. She smiled and agreed. Our anniversary is October 3rd. Has been for 12 years. Post-traumatic stress affects memory formation. Temporary confusion normal. The classified files are exactly where they should be. No references to impossible projects, no anomalous phenomena research, no reality maintenance protocols. Clean, proper, sensible government work. I have level 4 clearance, appropriate for my position, sufficient for my duties. But muscle memory knows different keyboard commands. My fingers type access codes I shouldn't know, for databases that don't exist. Sometimes the screen flickers, shows me fragments of files with impossible classifications. Then the headache returns, and the screen shows only standard emergency management data. Lingering neurological effects. Brain creating false sensory input to match delusional memories. I found Quinn today. Mailer Quinn, NSA communications analyst. He was in the cafeteria, eating lunch alone, reading a technical manual. I approached his table. "Do you remember the pattern analysis project?" I asked. He looked up. Young face, intelligent eyes, exactly as I remembered. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" FEMA Coordination Liaison. We worked together on the telecommunications review. "Ah, yes." Polite smile. "Good to see you again, Mr. Pike." Dathan Pike. "Of course. How's the recovery going? Heard about your incident." I wanted to grab him, shake him, demand he remember the server farms, the impossible data patterns, the moment he walked through that doorway and ceased to exist. Instead I said, "Fine. Coming along fine. Good to hear. Excuse me, I have a meeting." He stood, gathered his materials. As he walked away, he dropped a napkin. When I picked it up, I found coordinates written in his handwriting. The same coordinates we'd tracked before the final phase. Coincidence? Numbers can look like coordinates. Pattern recognition error. The coordinates led to a storage unit in Arlington. Rented 3 months ago by D. Pike. A signature that matched my handwriting but wasn't mine. Inside, radio equipment, backup hard drives, files marked with classifications that officially don't exist. And a journal in my handwriting, documenting everything I remember about Shadow Protocol. The last entry dated tomorrow. If you're reading this, the editing is incomplete. Some of us remember. Find the others. The protocol is still active, and reality is still fragile. When it breaks again, and it will, someone needs to be ready. Elaborate self-deception. Trauma victims sometimes create false evidence to support delusional frameworks. I'm filing this report as required. Equipment malfunction, temporary psychological episode, no lasting effects. Return to full duty status recommended. But I'm also updating the storage unit. Adding this report, properly encrypted. Documenting the small inconsistencies that prove we're living in an edited reality. Vesowin left a message on my voicemail this morning. Wrong number, she said, but she wondered if I was interested in joining a disaster preparedness group that meets on weekends. Educational discussions about impossible scenarios, she said. Purely theoretical, of course. Support groups help trauma recovery. Shared delusions provide comfort, but prevent healing. Alandra Crow sent me a research paper about consensus reality maintenance in large-scale social systems. Academic exercise, she claimed. She highlighted a section about memory persistence in edited populations and noted that truth has a way of surfacing through systematic cracks. Confirmation bias. Seeking information that supports false beliefs. The thing about gas leaks is they dissipate. Symptoms fade. Memory clears. But what if your memories aren't the hallucination? What if forgetting is? End official report. No follow-up required. Personal addendum, encrypted file. Day 7, 23:47 hours. They did good work, I'll give them that. The editing is nearly seamless. But nearly isn't perfect, and I've spent 15 years looking for flaws in emergency systems. Quinn remembers. His conscious mind was scrubbed, but his analyst training runs deeper than surface memory. Those coordinates weren't coincidence. Quinn remembers. No Secret Service agent calls wrong numbers. That was a contact protocol. Crow remembers. Nuclear safety inspectors don't research social psychology unless they're trying to understand what happened to society. Even more might remember, somewhere beyond death, that heart attack was remarkably convenient timing. The president is a good replacement. Perfect, even. But perfection itself is the flaw. Real people have tells, nervous habits, minor inconsistencies. This version never deviates from optimal presidential behavior. My wife's pot roast obsession is another crack. The editing tried to preserve our relationship while removing her memory of my real work. But relationship patterns run deeper than conscious memory. She knows something's wrong, so she keeps making my favorite meal, trying to comfort a distress she can't remember the source of. The shadow protocol worked exactly as designed. Reality breakdown contained, consensus restored, truth filtered into manageable fiction. The government functions smoothly with replaced personnel who never learned about anomalous phenomena. Society continues stable and unaware. But stability requires maintenance, and maintenance creates patterns. I've identified 12 other gas leak incidents in federal facilities over the past 6 months, all involving personnel with high-level clearances, all resulting in temporary psychological episodes, all officially resolved with no lasting effects. The protocol is still running, still editing, still extracting those who learned too much. Which means somewhere in the spaces between realities, there's a growing population of extracted personnel who remember the truth. Quinn warned us from editing space that the final phase would remake society. But what if that wasn't the final phase? What if that was just practice? Tomorrow I start reaching out to other survivors. Carefully, using codes we developed during the crisis. We'll build networks, share information, prepare for the next breakdown. Because reality is more fragile than anyone imagines. And when the next crack appears, when something so impossible occurs that even Shadow Protocol can't edit it away, we'll be ready. The truth wants to be remembered. It's encoded in storage units, hidden in academic papers, whispered in wrong number phone calls, and preserved in the nervous habits of spouses who know something's missing. Reality might be editable, but truth is persistent. And we're living proof that some things refuse to be forgotten. File encrypted. Auto backup to storage unit 247. Transmission scheduled to secondary sites. Next contact protocol, 72 hours. Remember, the protocol is still active. Remember, we are not alone. Remember, truth survives. Final entry, handwritten note. They're getting better at the editing. This report will probably read differently tomorrow. Maybe I'll remember writing something about successful recovery and return to normal duties. But muscles remember what minds forget. These hands will keep typing access codes for databases that shouldn't exist. These eyes will keep noticing the perfect inconsistencies in our edited world. And if I forget again, there's a storage unit in Arlington waiting to remind me. Reality is a collaborative project. They can edit the files, adjust the memories, replace the personnel. But they can't edit the pattern. And patterns, once seen, are never truly forgotten. D. Pike, FEMA Emergency Coordination Specialist. Shadow Protocol Survivor. Truth Keeper.